Now. All right. So, hey, I'm Evelyn.
And I'm Robert.
And we're talking about it.
So this chapter today is Mirror of Galadriel. And we have a special guest.
Yes, we do. Go ahead.
Hi. I'm Mike. Thank you for letting me be on the show. This is super fun.
Absolutely. We're really excited. So like all of our other guests, this chapter you specifically chose. And I think you were one of the first people to contact me going immediately, I want the Mirror of Galadriel.
This is a very cool chapter. I guess we're going to talk about it, but
right.
I mean, it's Galadriel. So, and the whole idea of Lothlorien. I mean, to pick your favorite chapter is such a weird, abstract thing. Like, I mean, my favorite quote in the whole book isn't in this chapter, but it's probably everybody's favorite quote in the whole book, I guess, is the one about pity, which is in the first book with Frodo and Gandalf. But outside of that particular quote, I think everything, there's so many things to unpack here. Kind of like what we're going to talk about, I guess, I'm jumping ahead. It's a cool chapter. I like it a lot.
Yeah. So give us a little background on you and Lord of the Rings. What's your experience with it? What do you like about it? What don't you like about it?
Yeah, okay. Well, but before I forget to say it, I do want to say this is the most interesting, genius concept that you've come up here with. I think it's like one of the things that I've always said is so I was born in 1983, which is the year that Return of the Jedi came out. So as also a huge Star Wars fan, I grew up already knowing in Empire that Luke's father is, I hope that's not a spoiler because everybody knows that, but Luke's father's, sorry guys. But I've always said, man, how cool would it have been to be one of those people in the theater who was like, what? And
yeah.
For you to actually, I know, yeah, did you, were you there? You're like, whoa.
Yeah, matter of fact, the initial movie, 77, I did not like sci-fi and fantasy at all. My best friend, Ricky, drugged me to the movie theater, and I sat there and went, now it's changed.
That's great.
Yep.
Well, but yeah, but getting you guys, it's just such a clever idea for the two of you to, from what I understand, you have sort of seen Fellowship years ago, and then that's as far as you've done, and you're literally reading week to week. And the idea of you saying, all right, well, this is what I think happens next week. It's just fun. It's not
I've truly never read these before. I read the first 3 chapters probably 4 or 5 times, and I just couldn't do it. But I know my dad's such a big fan that we just got into this concept where, all right, I definitely want to read it. What's going to motivate me to read it?
Well, you're going, it's like never ending story. Like what you're doing right now, having a guest on to talk to you, like you're literally taking this path and you're meeting new people along the way. Like that's the way to enjoy it. It's a very cool concept. I love it. But to actually answer your question, let's see. I read Lord of the Rings right before the movies came out. So Hobbit, I think everybody read as a kid. And the Hobbit cartoon, I'm sure I saw as a kid. The Lord of the Rings cartoon, I might have seen as a kid, but I didn't see it until I read the books much later. And I know people like it, but I was like, I don't like this cartoon quite so much. But so when the movies came out, I had a good buddy who was so in love with Lord of the Rings, and I'll probably tell him at some point that he should be on your podcast. But he was just a big fan. And so I was like, well, I should read it before it comes out because I want to see it. And I actually read the first book, saw the first movie, then read the next 2 books before the other movies came out. So I actually at the end of Fellowship, when I watched the movie, I literally didn't know what was going to happen next. And it was very, very interesting.
Okay, yeah, that's good. That's
that's a good way to do it.
But it's just a great book. I think it really is. I mean, it's definitely, I don't read nearly enough. My wife reads all the time in every book club. I just need to get pulled into something. And if I do, it's going to be a fantasy. But if you blank say, what's your favorite book? It's always going to be Lord of the Rings. I just think it's a journey every time you get into it. And there's always, and I appreciate the opportunity because I haven't read it in forever. And the opportunity to do this, I went back and said, oh man, this is real fun. I gotta go back and read the whole book again. So that's how I'm here.
Well, that's great. Yeah, literally our only criteria for guests is that they have to love the books and be willing to talk about it, because we want to talk to different people and their experiences on it.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Well, it hits everybody differently. So, but yeah, fun. Cool.
All right. So, Dad, do you want to give us a quick summary about what the chapter is about before we get into it?
Well, why don't you tell us what your predictions were first?
What were my predictions? Recorded the last chapter yesterday.
2 days ago, yeah.
I made more bold predictions about the future.
Okay.
I predicted that we would find out what the mirror actually was, and more about Galadriel herself. But I made the broader prediction that as soon as they leave Lothlorien, that Gollum would show up.
Okay.
So that's still in play as a
Gotcha. Yep.
future one, because I felt like this was going to be one of those like very straightforward chapters where I can't guarantee too much with prediction. Yeah.
Okay. Well, a quick summary. So they're already in Lothlorien. They have met elves, and then they get brought forward to meet these two head honchos. And what's really interesting is, while Galadriel's not the first one to speak, she's actually the more powerful one of the two.
Yes.
And it's really interesting because there's also a relationship between the hair colors and the gold tree and the silver tree from the beginning of the Middle-earth world, which is also interesting play. But they do get a chance to look in the which is copied in Harry Potter.
A little bit. I will mention that, don't worry.
Yes. And that Galadriel is also a culmination of a couple other earlier characters. And I want to talk a little bit about that too.
Once we get there.
Right.
Okay.
Wait, I missed part of what you said. Were you saying that her temptation was similar to Harry Potter? What?
The mirror.
The mirror.
Oh, the mirror. Oh,
it's very similar to a pensieve. So I'm a hardcore Harry Potter fan, so I don't go a single episode without mentioning Harry Potter. Because these books were obviously ripped off of Harry Potter.
Well, a lot of things were. That's the way it happened retroactively.
Yes.
Well, she also has. I mean, when you get to the tempt, I guess at the end, it makes me think of. Can you say Harry Potter spoilers on here?
Absolutely,
sure.
yeah.
I mean, at the end when Harry has the option of taking the three Deathly Hallows himself, and he chooses not to. I mean, that's very similar. But anyways, go ahead. Get where you're going.
All right.
All right. So I guess we can just dive right into it.
So it opens up with them having these silver lamps.
Yes.
And in Tolkien's world, silver is equated with moonlight.
Yeah.
And so these elves are very moved by moonlight.
Yeah, we see that a lot in this chapter.
Phone was ringing.
Phone always rings while we're trying to record this. All right. So yes, moon seems to be a very common theme within this chapter.
And then the color of Galadriel's hair. It's interesting because it's described two different colors.
Okay.
One time it says silver and gold, and the other one it just says gold. So I find that interesting too, how that might equate what personality, well, you can't see me do that. Personality.
Because this is an audio format.
She is going to take when she's with an audience.
So yes, we got a little ahead of ourselves. So basically they enter the gates, but they have to go around to the north-facing gates. I was wondering if there was any symbolic stuff with them having to go to the north gates.
Well, the north is away from, the north gate is the furthest away from everything not good.
Oh yeah.
Not necessarily evil, but not good.
Yeah, they have been saying in the south is where a lot of the darker things are happening. Right. Okay, that makes more sense. But yeah, we learn that they're in the court of Celeborn and Galadriel, and they want to meet with the party.
Right. Did you get any ideas about what was going to happen the first time you read this? Or was that so long ago you don't remember what you remembered?
I would say it's so long ago. I couldn't. I'm sure what I was. So Lord of the Rings is probably what painted my picture of elves moving forward. Like whenever I'm a big elf guy. I love elves. Whenever I play D&D, I often will play an elf, and a lot of the other people prefer to be other races, and I'm always just like, wow, that's so inferior. Why? I mean, if you have a choice, why would you ever be? I mean, who chooses to be a human? But I think, I mean, it goes through in so much of this literature, like what's the kids, the Aragorn, not Arag, no, yeah, Aragorn with the dragon.
The dragon.
Yeah.
Right, they're spelled differently. But
Yes.
I mean, everything in there is painting the same image of nature and beauty, and this is what the elves do. So I would imagine that's what struck me, is just the imagery that he uses and everything that they're saying. But
yeah, the Aragorn series was heavily influenced by Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah,
It's like come out several times saying, yeah, it's heavily influenced.
And the whole idea of elves living in trees, this is where it comes from. It's, at this point, there's a city of trees that the elves live in.
Right. Which the hobbits are very happy that they get to sleep on the ground later.
right.
And it's described in the book as climbing like a green cloud.
Okay.
And how, when Tolkien describes what it looks like from the ground.
Yeah. Speaking of which, to see the Lord and Lady of the Forest, they have to ascend this huge staircase. And the first thing that popped into my mind was the metro. Was that metro stop by the zoo? Or near DC.
Okay.
There's this crazy long staircase that like tourists attempt to go up, and it's like you can tell who's a tourist and who's a regular because like we're on the escalators, like it's gonna take a while.
Because it's a 3-story escalator.
Yeah.
Right.
So that was just the first thing that popped into my mind was that metro stop.
Right?
Sorry, that's just what popped in my head visually.
You guys aren't far from me. I'm South Carolina. We're East Coast.
Okay, we've got a lot of family in North Carolina.
Nice.
But yeah, so they meet there's this council of elves, and then there's 2 on this throne that are just tall and gorgeous with silver hair, and then the other with blonde hair. The female just as tall as the male. They are ageless except for in their eyes where they have seen things, is how it's described. And I just thought it was such a stark contrast from how everything else has been described so far, where this is more earthial rather than earthy.
Right. It's more ethereal,
however we pronounce that.
Yeah.
I think I say ethereal. Is that the
Ethereal?
thing?
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds right.
Also, say the name of the male the way you pronounce it.
Celeborn?
Celeborn.
Or at least that's how I thought it was.
I say it completely wrong. I thought it was interesting to hear. You learn, you read it, and that's what you remember at a young age. Whatever you say.
Right.
So I say Celeborn, but
Celeborn. Oh.
Okay, so here's the secret. Pastor, I tell this to the people who are reading in church, out loud in church too. Own it. Say it the way you think it is, and the other people go, oh, that's
what it is. Yeah, I like that.
Which is how Voldemort, the only person who pronounces it right is J.K. Rowling, who says Voldemort, but even in the movies they say Voldemort, so in my mind that's right.
Yep.
I've never heard the silent T. Well, I mean, I didn't realize she had a silent T there. Interesting.
Yeah, she just never bothered to correct anyone, and she's like, yeah, it's really supposed to be Voldemort, but whatever.
That's funny.
But yeah, so they meet the elves, and the Lady Galadriel, she approaches each person individually, welcoming them, especially Gimli. She welcomes Gimli very warmly, and he responds very positively to that, because elves and dwarves, as we've talked about before, there's a lot of animosity between them.
Right, between the races.
Yeah.
Yes.
And even earlier in the last chapter, there was some animosity there.
Right. And we also learned that This is the first time Aragorn's been there in 38 years.
Yeah.
So that gives you an idea of how old he is.
Yeah.
Too. A little bit more of an idea.
Right.
Although in Tolkien time, 38 years is nothing, and
Yeah.
Well, exactly. True. But it's interesting that they point that out.
Yeah.
So Galadriel, she's similar to Yesha in the book She
Okay.
and the Arthurian legend of the Lady of Shalott.
Okay.
Okay, there's a lot there. They're immortal, they're fair looking, they're beautiful, they're wise. We find out later that Galadriel is the one that weaves the cloaks that they give to them later. So all three of them are known for their weaving, and there's healing, and they all have that magic dish of water.
Yes.
As well.
Yeah, that's something that's very prominent in Anglo-Saxon mythology, which I will get to later once we get to that part. We've done a lot of research on this chapter, like we mentioned before.
Well, what you were saying with the whatever, or you were saying, or you were saying about Galadriel greeting him, but that's one of the things that I really like in this. It's interesting to see that Celeborn is like, despite all the years of animosity, we welcome you here. We're very happy to have a dwarf who's never walked in here before. And then like 2 seconds later,
right?
and then he he gets pulled back because he spoke harshly. But I think that's such a neat moment to me that it's like we gotta unite. This isn't the time for any more divisions. That's it made me think of that when you said that. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then they look for Gandalf.
Right, and
right, that's when it happens.
Yeah.
And that's when it happens because they were in the land of the dwarves. So he says, "Curse the dwarf! Why did I allow you here?"
Yeah, and then Galadriel's like, whoa. Wait a second. The dwarves, they've been through some stuff.
Stop throwing shade at Gondal. Because he says something like his folly made him fall or something like that. And
but something that I wrote down that I really stood out to me was when they first find out about Gandalf's fate, they cried aloud in grief and amazement. Yes. And I think this is the first time we've seen like emotions from elves, like proper emotions. Right. So it's like, this is such a big deal that Gandalf is supposedly dead or gone,
right,
that even the elves show emotion, which has kind of been portrayed as below them.
Correct.
Yeah.
They're Vulcans.
They're Vulcans. But it also gives you such a big appreciation of exactly who this was. Like, I mean, you like Gandalf the whole time, but when you see such esteemed people who are taking such, how much it hurts, and then they all sit back and reflect and they see it, I think he was greater. They're sharing their different stories. I think at some point, and I think you really appreciate exactly who this guy was.
And that continues through the book because you find out he was called different things by different people.
Yeah. And in this chapter, we learn more about him. And it's this common theme throughout this entire book that has made me go, excuse me, what? Because they'll like drop this information bomb and then not explain it. Like, oh yeah, I was reading minds. Oh yeah, I wield the power of the sun and creation. It's like, I'm sorry. Are we going to expand on this or not? It just, like, as someone reading it for the first time with no background knowledge, I'm like, what is happening?
That's funny.
And it's interesting too because she mentions that she had wished to be able to talk to him again.
Yes.
About something. And we can wait until I get into all the reasons why she probably wanted to talk. But it's also interesting that there's an Australian band named Galadriel.
Okay.
And they have they were progressive rock.
Nice.
From the 70s.
There's a lot of music that's been inspired by Lord of the Rings. Yeah.
We need to do a bonus episode on that.
We mentioned it on the Geek 101 podcast that we had It hasn't come out yet, but we're guests on this other podcast, and we do talk at length about how Tolkien just inspired so much within the music industry. But yeah, that would be a good bonus episode. Right. We have so many bonus episodes to do.
So, we bonus episode just on Gadriel.
Yeah, that too. Yeah, so they tell the tale about what happened to Gandalf, which we won't really get into because that's exactly what the last 2 chapters
were.
Yeah. But they tell the tale, and then Gimli and Galadriel have like a moment, like trademark moment, where she defends Gimli from like the folly of the dwarves and the curse of the dwarves, and he sees in her eyes, he looks into the eyes of the enemy and sees understanding. And that was just such a beautiful line again, like just Tolkien's wordsmith coming out. That really stood out to me, and I really appreciated that. And Gimli is just like, wow, elves are actually kind of dope.
Right. So yeah, I'm gonna read these 2 sentences here. Gimli, who sat glowering and sad, and she smiled. And the dwarf, hearing the names given in his own ancient tongue, looked up and met her eyes. And it seemed to him that he looked suddenly into the heart of an enemy and saw their love and understanding. Wonder came into his face. He rose and clumsily bowed in dwarf fashion, saying, "Yet more fair is the living land of Lorien, and the Lady Gadriel is above all jewels that lie beneath the earth."
Yeah.
So that's a heck of a...
I highlighted the same thing in my book.
So that's a heck of a
180.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's also, it's super cool that the clear more wise of the 2 is the female character. The more powerful of the 2 is the female character. And especially in this time period, but, for the longest, I feel like you don't see a heck a lot of that, the heroines. And so I think that's very cool about her. She's just a neat character. Everything, whenever the 2 of them talk, every time she's, having Celeborn like stay his hand, like, actually, no, Gandalf's not a fool. You have no idea what he was thinking. Yeah.
Right.
I really like the character of her very much.
Yeah, she's definitely, like, back in Rivendell, we see that Elrond is definitely the lord of the land. He's in charge.
Right.
But here in, I can't pronounce it right, in the woods, Lothlorien, she's the head honcho.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we learn a little bit more about that later. But something that I found interesting is the connection between the 2, because we do talk about how Elrond sends correspondence a lot between them. His wife is their daughter.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that was an interesting connection that I learned that
right.
I don't think is in the book, but I think that's an important connection to mention.
Yes. Yeah, well, they all get connected somehow.
Yeah.
Eventually.
Right.
So you want me to get into the Galadriel stuff, or you want to wait?
Let's mention the White Council part and then just do our information dump.
Okay, go ahead.
So as Galadriel's talking, she mentions that she is the one who originally had the White Council, which is all of like the wizards and everything, and how she originally wanted Gandalf the Grey to be the head of that council.
Right.
And you have a lot of information about that, so let's just get into it.
Well, he did not want to be the head because he wanted to stay independent.
Okay.
He did not want to have to worry about that. And everybody thought for sure that he was going to be the head.
Oh,
okay. So when Saruman becomes the head, I'm going by sources out of the Sumerian, the appendix for Lord of the Rings, and then the story, The Hunt for the Ring, and the Unfinished Tales.
Wait, so is Gandalf more powerful than Saruman? Because I was always under the impression that Saruman was more powerful.
They're
differently powerful.
Evil. I mean, they're probably about evil.
They're probably about evil, yes.
They're probably about even.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where's Radagast?
Radagast.
In power level.
Running around with bird poop on his head.
The only reason I know who that is because of the terrible Hobbit movie. That's the only reason I know who that is.
Well, don't sell him short. He's good too.
Yeah, he's good too.
I assume he's better than the way they portrayed him. But we'll get there when we get to the Hobbit episodes.
Right. Now, and actually, the White Council only met 4 times. So just to give you an idea about years.
Okay.
So what's happening right now is in the Third Age, 3019.
Okay.
All right. So the first meeting was in 2463.
Okay.
So like almost 600 years back is when they met for the first time.
Okay.
And there's a lot of stuff that is attributed to the White Council. I keep doing it. The White Council.
He's putting up quotation marks, guys.
But it's really, sometimes it's one of the main members of the White Council get it, and they kind of retroactively give the White Council.
So do we know why the White Council first convened at all?
Yeah, the White Council first convened after Gandalf had found Sauron was alive again, or the spirit was alive again.
Okay, that would make sense.
Right, and so, and that actually happened 400 years before the first White Council.
Okay.
Gandalf began what was called the Watchful Peace.
Okay.
Keeping an eye out, see what's going on.
To see if he starts trying to gather forces again.
Right.
Okay.
So, and then the second meeting was in 2851. And they actually met at Rivendell. And Gandalf was trying to urge an attack on Sauron's holdout. Saruman's holdout at the time.
Saruman or Sauron?
We do a lot of editing. Gandalf urged an attack on Sauron's.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess before he got too much power?
Right. But and that White Council didn't want to do anything, but when he got there, he found out that he had already snuck away. So, but they knew that must mean that the ring still exists.
Why would that mean the ring still exists?
Well, it's like the Horcruxes.
Okay.
If it did not exist anymore, his power would not have been in the world anymore.
Oh, okay.
So he's gathering power.
That's how it's got to be explained to me.
Okay.
So, and although this one ring was lost, Sauron had already gathered the 9 rings of men and 3 of the 7 rings of the dwarves.
Right.
So he's starting to accumulate power again.
Yeah.
Now, there was a meeting where Gandalf, set apart from the others, and in silence sat there smoking while Saruman spoke against the attack. And this irritated Saruman. So afterwards, he talked to Gandalf. Says, "What's up, man?" And he berates him for that nasty habit of smoking pipe weed. And he says, it's a practice of the halflings, and it helps give him patience. And Saruman mocked him again. Gandalf blew several rings and then put his hand through him and grabbed him. Kind of an indication of, I know you're trying to find this ring.
Okay.
Yeah. But when you read that, yeah, so I like this because it really gives a good character picture of Gandalf. You know, he's not the serious guy all the time.
Yeah,
you know,
but when he is, he means business.
Right.
But even when he means business, he does something out of the ordinary. He does something by surprise.
Right. And then after Bilbo had possession of the ring, it was not long after Sauron, opened the declaration of, for all intents and purposes, of war against the rest of the world. And they were so sure that the ring had washed out to the sea that there was really no problems here. It indicates that Gandalf even wondered if Bilbo's ring was the one true ring.
Mm-hmm.
But he's like, no, if it was, Bilbo would have been all weird and stuff by now.
Right.
So he discounted that until much, much later.
And that goes with the theme of people really underestimating hobbits.
Right.
Yeah, that's something we've talked about before. It's just everyone seems to underestimate hobbits so much, and they just turn out to be just so resilient.
And it's interesting when you think about it, because the hobbits are supposed to be representative of the British people.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of how that class of British people at the time saw themselves. Nobody takes us seriously, but we go in there and we kick butt.
Interesting.
Colonizers.
OG colonizers. The sun never set on the British Empire. Until it did. Okay.
Anything else on that, or was that your information dump?
That's my information dump, and we'll put all that information and where to find it
in the
notes
episode description.
Yeah.
Okay. What did you think of that?
Of the description?
Or the information dump?
No, I think it's good. I think it's there's a lot of things in here that I don't know how much you want to talk about, because I don't know what's spoilers and what's not spoilers. But I think the White Council is super cool. I think that you say the White Council, and you're kind of talking about the different people on it. But there's a couple. We said Ragadash and the wizards and all that, but Glorfindel is on it, and Glorfindel is.
Oh, he is.
The book doesn't talk about. This book doesn't talk a whole lot about Glorfindel.
Glorfindel, right?
Yeah.
But I remember when I watched, one of the things I do remember in the movies is that Glorfindel isn't in it. They replace his small role with Arwen, like Liv Tyler does it. And that always kind of bugged me. But I think that's a cool thing to mention, that Glorfindel's in this while we're talking about the White Council.
Interesting.
Yeah, and then,
yeah, the little bit I've learned about him, he seems like an interesting character.
Right, and then the elders. It just says elders, so I don't even have an idea of how many people that is.
Yeah, I honestly assumed that the White Council was just all the wizards.
No,
an elf.
All right, cool. Sure.
I mean, Elrond is on it, obviously. I mean,
yes.
There's Círdan.
Círdan's on it. Yeah.
Okay.
Interesting. But interesting, there was no. The only race besides wizards, were elves.
Okay.
Because they kind of looked down and discounted everybody else.
Yeah.
Going back to the old idea of the master race.
To talk more about this, listen to the bonus episode that we did on diversity in Tolkien's world, where we had some amazing guests really delve into that.
Yeah.
Tolkien was kind of racist, right? And maybe an anti-Semite, and is that accurate?
Okay, so the short version was he considered himself almost a Jewish file, where he bragged about how much he loved the Jews. And he's like, isn't this so neat that I made the dwarves look like Jews? And that I made the dwarvish language kind of like Hebrew. And instead of negative stereotypes, I'm trying to promote positive stereotypes. And it's, like I said, the episode, we talk a lot about it with the incredible Eric Silver, who himself is a Jewish Tolkien fan. And it's wild. Tolkien was definitely a product of his time. Right. And he kind of retroactively, in his later years, went, oh, I messed up. And he tried to go back and correct it, but it was damage done kind of thing. So at least in some way, I can say, not necessarily in his defense, but he realized he made a mistake, and he learned, and he did try to better himself.
Right.
Well, that's good.
So that's some credit I can give him.
Right, but it's also interesting because he's taking a lot of his experiences from World War I as well. Even though World War II is about to happen or happening while he's trying to put all this together, he's thinking about World War I.
Right.
And World War I really didn't have anything to do with, with the Jews that much and so forth.
Right.
But for him, the perfect race would have been the Englishman.
Yes.
So instead of the Third Reich.
Right. Yeah, he was actually very anti-Nazi. I do want to mention that. He was very anti-Nazi. He was very anti-Aryan race. He basically made fun of them for it and refused to let The Hobbit be translated into German until the Nazis were out of power. So I do want to mention he was very anti-Nazi.
And for your Harry Potter tie-in, so apparently Tolkien wrote this and he was kind of crummy and got better, and she did the opposite.
Exactly,
Yeah.
which is
That's interesting.
Yeah, that's
Oh, okay. You've gotten there already.
covered in that episode. J.K. Rowling is a yikes monster.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot, even Christopher Tolkien, when he was asked about what this relationship was between these two elf leaders, he's like, from reading Dad's notes, I have no idea.
He wrote so much. If only he had a computer. Last episode, if he had a computer, he might have been able to finish all of his crazy thoughts, but all of his thoughts might have led to more thoughts.
Right.
He was always thinking and creating.
He was a rabbit hole kind of guy too.
Yeah. He's definitely incredible with this world building. I don't think there's any other type of fantasy world that is as world built and thought out as this one.
Right.
And I read a lot of fantasy.
And even if it's not found in the book, I mean, he had to write all these notes for himself, and people would ask him questions about, well, where'd so-and-so come from? So, well, here, I got 2 pages. I just wrote about that.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, even with Dwarvish is basically Anglo-Saxon runes, but like Elvish is the fact that he made up entire languages is a whole
Yes.
thing.
Right, yeah.
There's so much there.
Yeah, and there's some speculation that he made up the language first and then decided he needed a story to go with it.
Huh, that's interesting.
I mean, that's, that hasn't been proven, and it's has not been proven.
There's a lot of sources that he started creating this Elvish language around the same time he had the thought there was a hobbit who lived in a hole in the ground,
right,
which started the whole thing. And so there's a lot of evidence showing that he had already started of thinking about the Elvish language, because he did create his own languages. He's been creating languages since he was 8?
Yeah.
Was what it was. And so there's a lot of evidence that he kind of had these 2 separate thoughts and was like, well, might as well meld them together.
Right. And as an academic, that's what he was a language specialist.
Yes.
I've mentioned this before, but in the Jerusalem Bible, which is the European Roman Catholic Bible, there was it was Job and
was it Noah?
And Noah.
Yeah.
No.
What was Noah?
Jonah.
I was close.
Job and Jonah. He translated those 2 books from the original Hebrew.
Yeah. Yeah, he knew like 10 regular languages, and then all the languages he created.
No, I can't even speak English sometimes.
Very proud of my D+ in Mandarin.
Because that's all she needed to pass.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on.
Back to the actual story. All right. I'm just getting a bunch of emails all of a sudden.
Called, yeah. So that night after the first meeting, as you mentioned already, the hobbits got to sleep on the ground.
Yes.
Thank the Lord, we get to sleep in the ground.
They did not like sleeping in the trees in the last chapter.
Right. And they hear these fair English, and they hear these fair Elvish voices around them, which kind of very soothing.
Yeah.
Helps them fall asleep and get some rest.
Yeah. Right before that, though, we did miss a very important part.
That's right, we did.
We did a very important part. Galadriel kind of basically just looks into their souls and is like, this is a dangerous journey. If you had the chance to turn around right now, would you? And only Aragorn and Legolas were able to hold her gaze.
Right.
Notably, Sam looked away and blushed.
Right.
And he and Pippin kind of talk about it, how he wishes he could be in his hobbit comforts, but he knows that this is where he's supposed to be.
Right. It was kind of, he indicates that he was basically offered to go back home.
Yeah. And Boromir is not happy about this. Boromir has not been happy about any of this the last couple chapters. And he's like, I don't trust this girl. I don't trust her. I don't trust her magic. And Aragorn's like, dude, shut up.
Yep. And which is interesting because being the only true human here, he's the worst of the bunch.
Right. Yeah.
Where's your symbolism there?
Yeah, exactly.
Tolkien was onto something.
Yeah. So it says they stay for a few days. And something I noticed was Legolas only stays with the party the first night. The rest of the night he goes off because this was something that he was very excited for. He had never been to Lothlorien before, and he was very excited to explore and meet his kin because he's very young for an elf. Mm-hmm. But something I noticed is he seemed to have like a 180 around Gimli, where he would go off and explore, but like he would take Gimli with him.
Right.
And I think that's the start of a beautiful friendship.
Yeah.
Which I know is like supposed to be symbolic for like the races like coming together later on in the books. I remember that a little bit from the movies, but
I imagine a lot of it's got to be empathy too. Like he just saw everything. Like out of everybody outside of Gandalf, you know, Gimli had the worst experience the last couple chapters, anyways. You know, discovering his entire home is destroyed and everything else. Like he's had a rough. You know, I guess it's a little further back than that, but yeah, so maybe it's empathy for him.
Yeah. His entire mission of finding out what happened to his kinfolk, they all died.
Yeah, it's devastating. Yeah.
Pretty terribly.
Yeah. And speaking of Boromir, you know, it's like, so after he kind of, you know, lays down some insults.
Yeah.
Aragorn, you know, speak no evil of the Lady Galadriel. You know not what you say. There is in her and in this land no evil, unless a man brings it hither himself.
So this is really hinting that Boromir is like not the best guy.
Right.
Which makes me sad because I love Sean Bean.
But Sean Bean plays and being a butthead so well.
Yeah. Well, he classically plays characters that make bad decisions.
Yes.
Yeah.
How many times has he been killed in movies? 9?
Something ridiculous. And of course, Game of Thrones.
Yeah, obviously.
But then after, you know, Aragorn says this, he goes, may I sleep deep and forget for a while my grief. I am weary in body and heart. He cast himself down upon his couch and fell once into a long sleep. And it's basically the first time
we've seen him weary.
We've seen him comfortable enough to really sleep.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I don't think we've seen him like properly sleep.
Right.
Yeah.
So
it's been a long couple days.
It's been a long couple of years.
Yeah. I mean, it's been what? Almost 2 months of travel at this point?
Yeah, probably.
With like a month's rest in between at Rivendell. So it's like a month of travel, a month at Rivendell, and then another month of travel almost.
Right.
So that's a long time.
That's a long time.
And most of that's been, or at least the last couple days have been like filled with like orcs and the Balrog and that water monster thing.
Yes.
So, I'd be tired. And I'm a regular human.
But they got to remain there for a while.
Mm-hmm.
So not only did they get a good night's rest, they were able to relieve themselves of their weariness and work towards maybe being, you know, full of heart again.
Well, kind of, because the next part is Frodo and Sam are feeling really restless. They're just going on a lot of walks. It kind of feels like they want to get moving again, is the way that it works. And they are very sad about Gandalf to the point where Frodo does another song.
And we get another song.
Which we're not going to talk about.
Well, we need to talk about it a little bit.
I knew you were going to say that.
Well, I mean, part of the song is him talking about Gandalf's fall.
Yeah.
And so he's already come up with these 6, 7 great verses of a song about that part of the journey.
Yeah.
And the book hints that he's been doing this since he's left the house.
And then Sam's like, oh, Bilbo would love this. But then Frodo's like, oh no, I have to tell Bilbo.
Right, yeah. That was the whole...
No,
well, very upset.
Well, and then Sam goes, but hey, I got another verse.
Yeah.
And it's like, the finest rockets ever seen, they burst in stars of blue and green. For after thunder, golden showers came falling like a rain of flowers. Well, Sam just grabs that out of the air.
Yeah.
He has been thinking about it since they left the house.
Yeah.
What's your thing with the songs? Are there just too many of them?
There's so many.
I have to admit, the very first time I read this book when I was in high school, I skipped most of the songs. Just because I don't know in my mind if it's in italics, it's not.
That's interesting. I want to consider that.
And it's just been tiring trying to read them and dissect them and understand them. There's just so many of them. Where in The Hobbit, they were like these cute little fun songs that really didn't mean much. But in this one, it's like, no, there's information here that needs to be discussed.
So, and now at this point, Frodo asks Sam, what do you think of elves now? So I want to ask you, what do you think of elves now up to this point in the book?
Oh, I think you're absolutely in love with them by this point. I mean, they're I mean, not back to your master race thing, but they clearly seem better than everybody. I mean, it's interesting that they're not the ones taking the One Ring, but you know, cool, calm, collected, in tune with nature. I don't know. I love elves.
Yeah, they're pretty cool.
They're pretty cool.
So I honestly don't think I've ever played an elf in D&D, now that I think about it.
Isn't that funny?
I always play like dwarves or halflings or genasi. That seems to be my go-to.
Yeah, I like dwarves.
Yeah.
I'm even playing a half dwarf now.
I think I played a half elf. Yeah, I played a half elf a little bit.
Yeah.
That's like as close as I've gotten.
I was gonna say, even when I don't play an elf, I play a drow or a half elf, or so. It's still there, you know.
Yeah.
Because I almost feel like being an elf is cheating because they are so good, and like because they are so awesome, it's almost cheating. Where it's just like, oh, I can do whatever.
I like that. You're right.
and here comes Robert with some D&D 101.
Okay.
Back in the first edition of Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. It's advanced, not just it's advanced.
Because you're a nerd.
Yeah. Most races could not get beyond a certain point of different classes.
Okay.
But humans were always able to go unlimited classes.
Interesting.
Humans were also the only ones that could dual class originally.
Okay.
So.
Well, you had to throw them a bone since they're not as good as the other.
Yeah. Had to give them something.
Okay. But now D&D is just crazy.
And so Sam is starting to miss things.
Yes.
He's starting to miss Mills. He's starting to miss the old Gandalf who just showed up to do fireworks.
Yeah.
So we got see, I'm saying so too many times this time.
We say so and a lot.
Yeah, that's why they're so long to
edit.
I can't watch my podcasts. I say all the time. Well, yeah.
Yeah, you would think I would be better because I took a public speaking class in college because it was mandatory, and we would get points taken off every time we would do it. Good at it, and then I don't know, with the podcast, just I regressed so much.
Well, I'm right there with you. Don't feel bad.
So as they are walking, did it again. They are walking through the woods and kind of exploring. they stumble upon Galadriel, who motions to them speechless. She just motions to the both of them to come.
You follow.
Yeah. And what I thought was interesting is I think this is the first time where Sam was purposely included. Because Sam just kind of goes with Frodo no matter what and just kind of sneaks in places. But this is the first time where they're like, no, Sam, you too. Come on.
Right. Because we know you're going to show up anyway.
Yeah. So they come to a stream, and Galadriel, she fills up this basin of water to the brim. And she explains that this is the mirror of Galadriel, which at this point, I want to say, she talks in the third person a lot and keeps throwing me off. Because I feel like only villains do that.
This is Galadriel's magic.
Yeah.
And gods.
Oh, my gods do that a lot. Yeah.
I mean, in almost all of the pathos,
Okay.
gods usually talk in third person.
Yeah. Okay. That makes more sense. Better than that like villain narrative, because I'm like, I know she's not.
Well, and also royalty. Queen Elizabeth does it all the time.
Well, no, they use like the royal we.
Right.
They don't say Queen Elizabeth would like some turkey now. Like
No, but she does say things like the Queen.
But she doesn't say Queen Elizabeth or Elizabeth would like some turkey. She says the Queen would like some turkey. Galadriel goes, Galadriel would like some turkey.
Well, she does,
like
she doesn't have a title.
She does, the lady.
But what lady? The lady wants to bring you over here. What lady are you talking about? Okay.
This is fun.
I wish you guys could see his beard. He's got a very dwarfish beard.
He does.
I drew it just for your podcast, and then I found out it was only audio, and imagine my disappointment.
It looks good.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
So she fills them up and says that this will show you what has happened, what is happening, and what soon shall pass.
Right.
And I want to talk about this a little bit because this is very similar to water. This is water scrying, which is very, very common in Anglo-Saxon mythology.
Right.
The Celts do it, the Vikings do it, just a lot of like the Northerners, Scandinavia, all of them, Germanic, have water scrying. It is very prominent in prophecies. And what's really interesting is what she says is the exact same rules as those water scrying, which is you can't exactly trust what you're going to see.
And don't touch it.
And don't touch it is bad. But with it, it can show you either what is going to happen, but sometimes it can show you what you want to happen. So sometimes your desire over what you want to happen, over knowing what's going to happen, can override that. So sometimes that can change. And then there's this whole idea that simply knowing the future changes it. So you can't trust the future either.
Right.
That simply knowing something can change it, which is like, that is the quintessential rule for divination in like Viking, Scandinavia, Anglo-Saxon prophecy and divination.
And it's the quintessential rule in time travel in every possible version of it, you know?
That's true, yes.
The butterfly effect, even if you just show up somewhere in the past, you've changed the entire future.
Right.
Right. That's part of the premise of the new Bill and Ted movie.
Want to see it. I've talked to a couple people who have seen it, and apparently it's really good. So
it's super good.
Okay. I'm excited to actually watch it.
I don't know if it's super good to you because I suspect you were not old enough to watch movies when it came out or alive yet.
No, I was not alive yet.
Yeah. So I think that I really liked it because it's very nostalgic. It's like, it's not like the greatest, most clever movie ever, but it's just like, this came back and I loved it. And it's very touchy-feely. I think I might have cried or at least teared up in a couple times.
Right.
But,
Now, yeah.
I watched it. You showed it when I was relatively young, and I just loved it. And then in college, probably in a single semester, I watched it 10 times, just showing other people who had never even heard of it. I'm like, no, you're watching this movie.
that's great.
Bill and Ted trivia. The young lady who plays Joan of Arc, she's the bass player for the Go-Go's. That's Janet. All right.
Rabbit hole.
That one might have been my fault.
No,
It's okay.
It's okay.
So,
Now even
Sorry.
Galadriel wants them to come look into the basin, and Sam decides that he will do it. And he climbs up because obviously he's a hobbit and very short, so he has to climb up to see into it. And at first he doesn't see much, but then the water changes and he starts to see a prophecy kind of the Shire. He sees this evil entering the Shire, and finally entering the Shire, because so far the Shire has been untouched, where he sees trees being cut down and people almost enslaved and doing work, and he sees his father old and all alone and suffering, and that upsets him more than anything. And then he also sees Frodo lying pale and motionless, and he's searching for something. So he kind of sees, it's revealed that he sees two possible things that he can do.
Right.
He has the choice to either go to the Shire and fight this evil, or stay with Frodo and help him with whatever this is going to be.
Right.
And that's a very hard decision for him.
Yes.
I think this is the first time that he really properly questions if he's in the right place.
But then he's reminded, you can't go back alone.
Right.
So make up your mind.
Yeah.
So with your having watched Fellowship a long time ago and not ever read the books, I wonder if these two prediction visions, like the one that he had and the one that Frodo has, I'd like to hear what you think any of that means, or do you have enough knowledge from what we know?
So I watched the old cartoon Lord of the Rings ages ago. So I do know that there is a problem when they finally are trying to dispose of the ring. So I'm assuming that it's alluding to that. I know that Frodo starts to get corrupted at the very end, and Gollum bites his hand off and goes and falls into the volcano. Spoilers.
Hand, just finger.
Oh, just the finger. Yeah, Frodo of the 9 fingers. So I'm assuming it's going to be something around that, but I'm also going to assume that there's going to be more to the book than the movie showed. Because, and I think I watched the last movie one time, mostly through a blanket, because it scared me because I was so little. So I, honest to God, don't remember the last movie at all. So I don't think I even saw the second one. Now that I'm thinking about it, I don't even think I saw the second one, because the first one freaked me out when I was little. And then as for the Shire, I really don't have any context for that. I'm like, oh, I guess the Shire is in trouble. I guess someone else is going to have to figure that out since Sam can't go. And I hope that works out.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that I think I know the part you're talking about, that it's not in the movies at all.
Okay.
And so that's interesting. I find that very interesting that they didn't put it in the movie, because you needed a lot of backstory to understand what was going on, which we get from reading of it, not necessarily watching the movie.
Okay, so I guess we're getting, because if I remember correctly, Sam doesn't even look in the basin in the movie, does he?
Mm-hmm.
Does he?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I don't remember this. I guess we'll see when we get to the movie episode. Yeah, so Frodo is more reluctant. Or was there anything else we wanted to talk about, Sam?
That's good.
Okay.
But she does kind of give him a little jab in the ribs about now you have seen elven magic.
Yes, where he was curious about elven magic before, and Frodo was a lot more timid
Yeah, I'd rather
about
not.
it. And he asked Galadriel what she would suggest, and she's like, I can't tell you either way. You have to decide on your own,
Yeah.
which he does.
Mm-hmm.
So he looks and he sees this white figure that reminds him of Gandalf. And I do know from spoilers that Gandalf comes back in white and as Gandalf the White. So I'm assuming it's alluding to that. But I think it's really interesting that in the book we get an allusion to that very quickly. And some hints at that, which is really cool.
But then again, with the Judeo-Christian background, seeing Gandalf in white also might mean he's an angel now.
True. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That's true.
And I'm sure very much could believe it's Saruman too. Like, I don't think that's a weird.
That's right. Yeah. He
Yeah.
thinks it could be Saruman, which it leads me to things like if it is Saruman, would that be him having a change of heart and coming over to the good side and able to resist the temptation, or maybe not? We don't know. Or I don't know.
This is also where we get the first image of the eye.
Well, not quite yet. There's one more vision before.
Right.
Where he sees a boat with black sails.
Yes.
And an open ocean, which I'm going to guess is a reference to the sea and going west, because I know that's been something that's been talked about before.
Yes.
And then after that is when we finally see the eye, and the eye, that freaks.
Well, he also sees the flags with the banner of the White Oak, right? I think.
Yes, he does.
Yes.
I don't know at what point, if you know what that means yet or not.
I do not. I'm assuming White Oaks has to do with the elves again, since they're very nature oriented.
Well, I'll let you read the book. I don't know at what point what things were revealed, but I felt like that was kind of an important detail.
Yeah.
But then yes,
Okay.
the eye of course comes out.
Yeah.
Right.
So afterwards the eye comes out and it really freaks out Frodo, and the ring on the chain on his neck becomes very heavy and he starts to fall in. And that's when Galadriel's like, do not touch the water. She's very adamant. It's like, no. And she stops the vision. And that's when we learn that she is being hidden from Sauron as well.
Right.
And as the ring bearer, Frodo can see what Sam could not. Sam just saw sunlight coming through her hand, but Frodo sees this ring.
Right.
And the curiosity got the better of me, so I looked it up. And the ring it's a white ring that symbolizes water. And apparently Elrond's ring, which we know he has, is blue and symbolizes air.
And there's a fire ring that they don't know where it's at.
Right, there's a fire ring that hasn't been mentioned yet. And I didn't read that because I didn't want any spoilers. But I just thought it was really weird that the white was water and that the blue was air. Because that seems...
The fire ring hasn't been mentioned yet?
Fire ring's not been mentioned yet.
It's just that there is a third ring. And
okay.
I briefly saw that there was that it was earth, air, it was water, air, and fire. So obviously the third one has been fire, but I have no idea what the third one is.
Is Ninya the first one that's mentioned by name?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Ninya.
Okay.
Yes.
The ring of adamant.
Yeah. And the only reason I know Elrond has it is because you slipped up and told me earlier when they were in Rivendell. He spoiled that for me. But yeah, I don't know anything about the last ring. I'm assuming that Legolas's dad has it. That's what I'm gonna guess, because there's like the three. I'm gonna go ahead and make that prediction now. That Legolas's dad has it because the three different elf kingdoms.
Right.
That would just make sense, right?
Well, they're called the Rings of Elves.
Yeah, they are the Rings of Elves, and it would make sense that they went to their leaders. So maybe the leader of Mirkwood has the fire one. Sure.
But
That's a sound theory.
Icky.
Oh yeah, we find out that even though the rings were taken from before Sauron could corrupt them, the One Ring still has dominion over them, and that's
Right.
that's insane.
Right. But well, before we get to the next part, you got.
You broke up. What'd you say?
I said before we go on to the next part of that, did you have anything you wanted to say or add?
I don't think I can add anything that doesn't turn into a spoiler. So no, I think I'm
Okay.
I like that. The next part, we can move on to that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so Frodo offers the ring to her.
Right. Do you want to talk about this? Because this one like kind of threw me off a little bit.
Yeah.
This is great.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
Yeah. So he offers the ring, to her.
Yeah, like,
Thinking
I don't
that,
want it. He keeps offering the ring to plenty of people.
Well, sure thing, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I don't want this responsibility. No, thank you.
It's like, oh, you already know what it's like to have a ring.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you take care of this?
Yeah.
And so this is her big temptation that we talked about earlier.
Right.
On. So I think you had something you wanted to talk about the temptation.
I think you were making a different allusion to Harry Potter, and
yes.
So this is the same temptation to take all the Deathly Hallows, or take whatever the power for yourself.
Right.
But that's all it was, I think. But I do love this whole. She's like talking to him, but I feel like she's talking to herself the whole time.
Yeah.
Basically assuring herself and thinking through, I really could do a great job with this ring. I really could, but then it probably wouldn't work out. And I like the whole, another reason this character is such a fantastic character is she's strong.
It definitely felt like monologuing, like with the villain monologuing, where it's like, I could be the ring, and I could be the Lady of Darkness, and everyone would love me and fear me and stuff like that. And it's just like, wow, okay, that got real quick. Like I think I had to read it 3 times because I'm like, wait, what?
I know. My favorite line in there is, "All shall love me and despair."
Oh my gosh, that makes me think of The Office.
Dwight?
From The Office, where Steve Carell's character is like, I want them to fear how much they love me. Yeah, The Office is great. It's gold.
She comes out of that and then laughs at herself.
I passed the test.
I will diminish and go into the west and remain Galadriel.
And that, I had an audible sigh of relief when I read that. Finally processed. I'm like, wow, okay.
Oh, okay.
I had I was honestly concerned for a second.
Wait, did you think she was going to take the ring?
I didn't think necessarily that she was going to take the ring. I thought it was going to be similar to Bilbo, where Frodo had to keep it from her, and by distancing himself, that she was going to kind of snap out of it. That's what I thought was going to happen. So it was an audible sign of relief where she was able to almost snap herself out of it, and I'm like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Because for 2 seconds, I'm like, was Boromir right?
Well, I do love that she tested every single member of the party, and then she tested herself.
Yeah.
They tested her back. That was a fun comeback around moment, I guess.
Yeah.
But she passed.
And it's interesting because the next paragraph is, "They stood for a long while in silence. At length, the lady spoke again. 'Let us return.'" It was like they were having an awkward moment of silence. And then she'd be like, "Okay, that's it. Let's go."
I put myself in Frodo and Sam's shoes where they're like, what just happened?
Yeah, Sam never wants to see any magic again at this point.
Yes.
Yeah, Sam's like, I'm good. Thanks. I've seen it. I'm good. It's kind of like Comic-Con. Where you go to Comic-Con, you're like, all right, that was an experience. I love Comic-Con, but there's some days where I'm like, if I never went to another one, I would.
That's great.
There's some weird stuff there, man.
Yeah, I know, that's right.
But then Frodo asked the question about, okay, I'm permitted to wear the ring. Why can I not see all the other rings?
Yeah. Why can't he? I didn't really understand the explanation.
Oh, I really like the explanation. Well,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah, she basically says you haven't tried.
Oh.
But she knows he's tried it 3 times. He's worn it 3 times though. And that's one of the things that kind of freaked me out.
Oh, is that she knew exactly how many
times he's had it on.
Well, that didn't freak me out necessarily because she can read minds, which again, like, okay, cool, read minds, let's move past it.
Well, what I think is really revealing here is because when you're reading the book, the whole thing is like, oh, this is the most powerful object of all time. Just put it on and kill the bad guy, you know? And
yeah.
This is the time where you get, oh, it's only as powerful as the person who's using it. You know, Galadriel, Gandalf would be amazing with this ring, but his power is very limited.
Yeah.
So
I do train his mind more.
I do remember what I thought when I read this, but I can't tell you because it turns out not to be true. But in like 6 months or whatever, call me back and I'll tell you exactly what I thought during this scene.
You know, that could be an interesting thing for us to do at the end is talk to all of our guests and it's like, okay, we finished. What couldn't you tell me?
What couldn't I say the whole time?
that could be an interesting thing.
You can count me in. I will have a lot of fun with you.
Okay, that sounds like a good idea. But I got because I'm just a nerd. I got My Hero Academia vibes from that, where for anime fans, because I'm a millennial, so maybe some other millennials will understand what I'm talking about, where Deku, he gets this great, awesome power, but he has like no training and he's very weak. So every time he like uses this power, he like breaks his arm or breaks his leg, where he gets super strength, but his bones are not super strong. So it's like he punches something, breaks his hand, jumps up really high, breaks his leg. So he has to like train his body to like be able to use this power without literally dying. And that's what I thought.
Well, I didn't get any of those references you said, but I agree with you. That sounds right. Daku and Goku and who?
For those of you who know my Hero Academia, I have been told I am just like Bakugo. Take from that what you will. If you know what that is, tweet at me.
Oh, that's great.
But Sam's like, well, I wish you would take it away.
Yeah.
I wish you would take it and then make everything right so we can go back and take care of the Shire.
Right.
And she says, did you see my ring? He says, no, lady. To tell you the truth, I wonder what you were talking about. I saw a star through your fingers.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what he sees.
Yeah, just a light.
A light. I love the effect they do in the movie, though.
Okay, I don't remember it.
Yes, I love that effect, how they do that in the movie when she turns all.
Oh, when she goes bad.
Yeah.
Oh
yeah.
Where she's got like the teeth situation going on. I've seen the meme of that. Is that this scene?
No.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
But yeah, I do, like when you said earlier that you were afraid of the first one when you saw it as a kid, I pictured this scene as being the only one that I could be like, oh, that seems like that would be pretty scary.
I'm pretty sure it was this scene that scared me, but anything with Gollum freaked me out.
Like, I can buy that, okay.
Like, okay, to give you an example, our
for the third time in this podcast,
our dog, our older dog, was my brother's dog, and he named her My Precious.
Oh.
He would constantly do it in My Precious, just because he knew he freaked me out.
That's pretty good. That's funny.
That's how petty my brother is. He named his dog to annoy me.
That's great. I love it.
Just the pure pettiness.
That's funny.
But your dog was born on Frodo's and Bilbo's birthday. So.
Yes, my dog was born on their birthday. So
what's your dog's name?
his name was Moses.
Oh, okay.
We did not get to name him. He came from someone else who had already named him.
Came from a breeder who was going to have him be a breeder.
But he was too tall.
But he was too tall and had the thyroid thing.
Yeah.
So.
He was a Sheltie. For anyone who knows what Shelties and Collies are, he was a Sheltie that passed for a short Collie. He was that tall.
He was too tall to be a Sheltie.
Shelties are miniature Collies. He looked like he was a Collie. Was how tall he was. Yeah. We'll have to throw. And now our current dog is named Bones after Leonard Bones McCoy from Star Trek. So
Nice.
We're just a big nerdy family.
Nerdy family. I love it. That's great.
And the cat's just Goose because he's gray. So he's Gray Goose after the alcohol.
Oh, man. You almost said the hat trick there. I thought it was going to be a Maverick thing.
No.
But we found out later about
Captain Marvel's cat.
Captain Marvel's cat's named Goose. But that was long after he had already been called Goose.
I didn't know Captain Marvel's cat was... Which Captain Marvel? The DC or the Marvel?
Oh, DC.
Okay.
Marvel.
No, Marvel. I'm sorry.
Marvel. Captain Marvel from...
Marvel.
Yeah,
Marvel.
from DC. From Marvel.
Marvel.
Yeah.
The cat, her cat is named... That's actually an alien, is named Goose as well.
Oh, from the movie. Okay,
Yes.
I remember now. Okay. So I'm getting... When I hear Captain Marvel, I go to Shazam...
Yeah.
Okay, understandable.
Yeah.
But yeah, my
I bet-
brother named him too.
Well, she was a pilot. I bet she named Goose after Maverick.
That could be easily. I think that is the reference.
I think so too.
I think that actually is the
I think
reference.
that's the reference. Yeah. So, well, we've come to the end of this short chapter.
It's a short chapter, but there's just so much to unpack.
So, anything else to add? Anything else?
I think we covered a lot. Anything else you would like to add?
No, I don't think so. Keep it up. This is fun.
Yeah, well, we're going to keep doing this, working on it.
I think we've got, 2 more chapters to go?
2 more. I think it's 2 more chapters before we finish Fellowship of the Ring.
Yeah, we're really close to the end here. I'm, really surprised. You can see my book. I've got my tabs getting close to the end.
You're not showing the book because
Oh.
the speaker's not.
I can see.
I have a lot of tabs.
Well, I'm sure. You guys do a lot of work.
Stuff that I think is important. Not necessarily really important, but yeah, so we're at Mirror of Galadriel. So yeah, it's 3 more chapters after this.
Yeah. So, all right. So, Mike, why don't you tell us where we can find you?
Oh wait, predictions first.
Oh, predictions first.
Sorry, predictions.
Mike's going to come back later on and tell us what he wanted to tell us without spoiling.
Yes.
That's a great prediction.
All right. So the next one is Farewell to Lorien. What is Lorien just another word for Lothlorien? Because that's been interchangeable.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Okay, so it's Farewell to Lorien, so I'm gonna assume they leave. I'm gonna guess that. No, never mind. I was gonna say that they get another pony or horse or something, but I don't think anyone can replace Bill. No. On this podcast, we stand Bill. I don't think anyone can replace him. So I'm gonna say that. So I'm not gonna predict that. So my prediction does come back into effect, the Gollum one, where I do predict that Gollum is gonna show up pretty much right after they are out of Lothlorien.
Okay.
I'm gonna predict within a chapter he's going to show up. Really immediately. Not the one where I was just Gandalf's gonna show up and it took 10 chapters. I'm going to predict it's gonna be close to immediate.
Okay.
I'm gonna guess that Boromir is gonna complain some more. He's seeming like a complainer.
One does not simply walk into Mordor.
I was so upset that wasn't in the book. I was so upset. I predicted that. I predicted that they were gonna say that, and no.
You shall not pass was in the book, though, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, it was you will not pass.
It's will you? Yeah.
It's you will not pass. It was you not shall not pass. I was upset about that too.
And actually in the original edition, it's cannot.
Oh yeah, that's true. It's like you cannot pass as well.
Interesting.
Oh my gosh. So I need one more. I don't know.
Predict how many times we're going to say and I'll keep count.
24.
You've already said 24.
Probably have. I'm going to predict that Merry and Pippin are going to do something stupid.
That's a great prediction.
Talk about going out on the limb.
I know, right?
They're gonna do something they shouldn't do.
Hedging your bets here.
Cause the trouble.
Trouble with tribbles.
Yes, tribbles.
Back into Star Trek.
I'm gonna make a prediction right now. No tribble shows up in this book. All right. So Mike, again, thank you so much for joining us. Tell us where we can find you on the internet.
Yes, so I'm Mike Wine Guy, which is Mike Wine -Guy. So you can find me on Facebook and Instagram and all that good stuff. And this week I'm starting TikTok, so we'll see if that actually works. But my actual show is called Ride Between the Wines. And it is on YouTube on video, and then it's also on audio if you like audio better. And it's just me talking to winemakers around the world about what they do. So
cool. Yeah. And we'll definitely have your information in the episode description as well.
Yes.
Thank you.
Point people towards you.
Yep.
That's kind of cool though, being able to talk to different winemakers.
That is.
I'll tell you, it was called Ride Between the Wines, and it was started in audio only, and then eventually I put the video, but it's called Ride Between the Wines because it took place in my car. So I sell wine for a living, so if a winemaker was ever in the car with me, I would just pop on the camera, which is super cool, but with COVID, nobody's been in my car for 7 months. So it's actually turned out to be a little bit better because now I'm Zooming and I get to talk to people in Italy and Greece and Australia who would never be in my car, and it's much more firsthand, so it's a lot of fun. I enjoy it. So
I'm trying to remember how much winemaking they got down in South Carolina
now. So in America, I mostly sell West Coast wines. We don't.
Okay.
The type of some other people might disagree with me, I guess, but the type of grapes that grow here are not from the same strain of grapes as virtually every other grape. So the genealogy of every French grape and everything is called Vitis vinifera. And then the type of grapes that do well in our more humid, different type of environment, they make a lot of sweet wines and things that just aren't things that I particularly love so much. But it is made here. I mean, there's a couple in town. It's just not usually my cup of wine.
All I know is that here in Maryland, we've got a couple wineries, and my brother's getting married in one. That's the extent of my knowledge.
As you go further up, even on the East Coast, I feel like it just gets better. Like, Virginia's doing some cool stuff. New York, they do some really neat things up there. But much below Virginia, people can argue about it, but it's not usually what I enjoy very much. So.
And you see a lot of new vineyards going up even around here.
Yeah.
They're probably going to be 2 or 3 years before they get grapes good enough to make wine out of.
Well, I'm passing one now going to work. There's a private residence where they just turn their entire backyard into this grape field. And it's they're probably just making it for themselves, but it's really fun just over the last year and a half, just driving past this house and seeing them grow. I'm like, oh, good for them.
That's super cool. I'd love to grow my own grapes and make them and be able to have my own wine. That seems super fun.
I'm really into succulents right now. That's what I've been growing.
I hear they're hard to kill, right?
No, they're hard to grow.
They're hard to kill, but they're hard to grow from seedlings. So
Oh, I've never even heard of people doing that.
yeah, that's what I've decided to do because I have a relatively green thumb. So I'm like, I can do it. It's difficult. My succulents are doing really well, except for my string of pearls. So to anyone out there listening, if you know anything about string of pearls, help.
The cat also likes them too.
Yeah, I think the cat has been sitting in them.
It's a great Duke Ellington chart. Does that help? That's all I know about string of pearls.
All right. Well, are we done?
I think we're done.
All right. Well, I've been Robert.
I've been Evelyn.
I've been Mike.
And we're talking about it.
Well, y'all are great.